Hello and welcome to episode number 21 of the Joe Kennan Health Podcast. I am Joe Kennan. As I record this episode, it is a very cold December afternoon. And since it is December, you know what that means. Yes, it means the holiday season is quickly approaching. And I know that for those in the gym world, it means they're going to be running a lot of specials to get new members to join up. Many of those new members will have New Year's resolutions on getting better shape and improving their fitness levels. And for some of them, that also means hiring a personal trainer. In this episode, I want to give you some tips and strategies on finding a personal trainer who's qualified and right for you. But before we get into any of that stuff, let me delve into what I want to talk about this week in terms of the myth of the week, and that is whether processed foods are actually bad for us. We often hear that eating processed foods are not so healthy, with the consumption being linked to a variety of health problems such as gaining weight, diabetes, cancer, you name it. And on the surface, I would agree that this is most likely true for the most part, because there is some research noting that processed foods tend to be less nutritious and less healthy than more natural foods. For example, as I recorded this episode, a study crossed my computer screen where researchers looked at the diets of over 40,000 people, middle-aged and older adults, who were followed for about 7 years. These researchers noted something interesting, which is that as people consumed more processed foods, with every 10% increase in those processed foods, those people had about a 14% increased risk of dying. In other words, the more processed food they ate, the less likely they were to live. Now, no surprise here, the researchers speculated that this may be due to the fact that processed foods have more sugar and salt and other additives like BPA, which is an estrogen-like compound you sometimes find in plastics. Although I gotta say that from a study like this, where they basically followed people for a few years and had them fill out food questionnaires, it's really difficult to tell what was the issue with these people, why they didn't live so long. But it actually does still add to the growing amount of research that shows that processed foods are not so good for us. So while I do agree with, on the surface, that processed foods are not so good and that, some of the research is kind of disturbing, the question I want to pose to you is it true that all processed foods are bad? So let's think about this for a moment. When you slice and dice fruits and veggies, you are processing them. When I, make my world famous smoothie in the morning, email me, I'll show you the recipe where I throw in fruits and, pumpkin seeds and stuff like that into my Vitamix. I'm also processing those foods. So is it true food processing is bad? And so the answer obviously is no, it's not. I think that when we say processed foods are bad and evil, we need to make the distinction between minimally processed foods and, say, more ultra-processed foods. Minimally processing is essentially doing the least you can do as you prepare the food, while ultra-processing is just the opposite. It's what you might see in, say, a manufacturing facility where significant changes are made to the food as they prepare it. They for instance, might add sugars and salts and fats and other things to make the food taste better, look better, and even last longer as it's sitting on the shelf of some store. So skip back to episode number 11, where I summarized what might happen, at least in one person who ate basically a diet only of processed foods. Pretty crazy what happened to that person. But I bring all this up because while the distinction between processed foods being bad for us is technically not really a myth, I'm seeing the word ultra-processed pop up more and more. And I think that's a reason that I wanted to bring this up because, again, technically not all food processing is bad. It's only when we look at the more processed stuff, that's when we start getting into problems. So again, I think it's best to make the distinction between how the food is processed. Generally, the least processing done, the more healthier and nutritious the food tends to be. So not really a myth, just something I wanted to bring to your attention. I do think you'll be hearing the word ultra processed more in the coming years. It is something I have been noticing a lot of lately. So that's it for the potatoes of the podcast. Let's delve into the meat. And one of the reasons I wanted to do a podcast originally is I wanted to talk about things that I didn't really think were being addressed well enough. And one of those things are issues related to the personal training industry. Now, as some of you may know, one of the things that I do is, I do work one-on-one with some individuals myself. And in addition to that, one of the other things I do is I do train personal trainers. I am one of the people responsible for making sure that fitness trainers are certified and educated. Here in the United States, where I'm based, personal trainers and other fitness trainers need to obtain a fitness certification before they can work, and they obtain that fitness certification by passing an exam. Passing the exam, getting certified, means they essentially know the basics on how to work one-on-one with people as fitness professionals. Now, since we're coming up on the holiday season, I do know a lot of people are going to have New Year's resolutions, and some of those people are going to want to get in a better shape, join a gym. And so for some of them, that means they're going to be looking to maybe get a personal trainer. And so that's what I want to talk about in this episode. One of the things that I want you to know from the get-go is that when it comes to the fitness industry, I don't really pull any punches. I have some tough words for those in what I call big fitness. Today is not going to be any different, except that I want to put the focus on you to help you find a personal trainer who's right for you and avoid those who are not right for you, and they're out there. Now, I do want you to know there are some very good personal trainers out there, and that's the goal here. I want to try to point you in the direction of those qualified individuals and help you avoid those you don't need in your life. And so for the rest of this podcast, I'm going to share some tips, insights, and strategies that I've learned and observed over the years. And even though I am based in America, I do know that the qualifications for personal trainers in other countries may be different. But I do think some of the things I'm going to be talking about today will help you too if you're listening in, say, the UK or Germany, etc. So let's talk about this whole thing of personal training. First up, let's define what a personal trainer is. So there is no official real definition of personal training. I have developed my own over the years, and so I'll just basically succinctly give it to you right here. I define a personal trainer as a member of the healthcare system who prescribes exercise in a certain dosage to elicit positive changes in health, wellness, fitness, and quality of life. That's basically my working definition. Now, I do realize my definition is bigger than most others out there, because I do recognize that fitness trainers are members of the healthcare system. And I really do say that for a reason, because if you think about it, personal trainers prescribe the most powerful drug in the world. That drug is called exercise. And its effects will differ according to the dosage that someone does. And the dosage is defined by how much weight did you lift, how many repetitions did you do it for, how many sets, how long did you exercise, how many days a week you exercise. All those things, they are part of the dosage of exercise. And different dosages, different intensities, if you will elicit different effects and are appropriate for different people. Now, if some of you are saying that you may not agree with me that fitness trainers are members of the healthcare system, I do want to take a step back and point out that in pretty much every exercise science textbook I've ever read, that the word exercise prescription comes up over and over and over again. Exercise prescription. Personal trainers prescribe exercise. And I also like to bring this up because when you think about it, if you say go to a doctor, you maybe see a doctor maybe once or twice a year. Maybe you'll see that doctor for between 3 and 5 minutes. That's about an average doctor's visit here in America. If you are injured, you may be able to go and see a physical therapist. But again, here in America, at least, you're limited to maybe 10 to 20 visits with a physical therapist, depending on what your insurance is like. And then once that insurance runs out, then you're on your own. But as a personal trainer, these individuals will see their clients 1, 2, 3 days a week, between 30 and 60 minutes a day, sometimes for years. What I'm saying here is that a fitness trainer can potentially have the greatest impact on the long-term health of that individual because they spend the most time with them. They have a greater opportunity than other professionals to sit down and talk to them about maybe nutrition, maybe about exercise and health and wellness and where they're going with their life and things like that. And so that's why, I also classify members of personal trainers as members of the healthcare system. And I really do feel strongly about that because they really are. Now, I also recognize that my definition is somewhat weightier than others, and it also means that personal trainers need to do more than just tell someone to lift that weight 10 times. That went out with the 1970s. Personal trainers today need to know how to apply the appropriate amount of exercise to the person they are working with. And while that is actually a topic for another episode, today I want to give you the tools to help you find a personal trainer who may be right for you and your particular needs. So before we go further, I want to make a couple assumptions here. I want to assume that you're going to be joining a gym, and I'm also going to assume that you're essentially going to be a novice because, surveys show that's tend to be the person who hires a personal trainer the most. It's not usually professional athletes. It's usually novices, beginners, or people who haven't worked out in a long time. Now, when you do join a fitness facility, a gym, if you will, it's possible that you may be given a free or complimentary session with a personal trainer to introduce you to the gym and your first workout and stuff like that. You may be given 1, 2, 3 sessions. It just varies according to the facility we're talking about. Now, if you are given one of these complimentary session packages with a personal trainer, there are some questions that you should be asking before you just put yourself in their hands. Oh, and by the way, the questions I'm going to share with you in this episode are going to be really relevant to whether you're working with a personal trainer, say in a gym, or maybe you're working with a self-employed personal trainer. Maybe they go to your homes or something like that. So the questions I'll give you will be relevant to whatever situation we're talking about. Now, most fitness centers are going to have a whole bunch of personal trainers. Sometimes they may have, 10 personal trainers on staff. And while most of them, say in a gym, probably are not going to have references from their former clients, they might, and that may be a question you might want to ask. I just don't think most of them will have references of former clients. If you are given the opportunity of working with a personal trainer and you can pick one yourself, one of the first questions that I would suggest you ask, say, the fitness director or the manager or whoever is in charge of all this stuff is ask them this question: who would you trust to work with your mom and dad? That's, I think, a very important question because when you ask this question, this can sometimes weed out the overly aggressive personal trainers who, quite frankly, I don't think are appropriate for most people. So the question's not perfect, but it is something I think you should add to your repertoire of questions that I'm going to be discussing in this episode. Who would you actually trust, your mom and dad or your grandparents, for instance? Now, I would phrase it just like that. I would not phrase it another way and say to whoever runs the facility, who's the best personal trainer? I would not phrase it that way. And I say that on purpose because the best personal trainer may not necessarily be the most qualified personal trainer. The best personal trainer in a gym may be the person who makes the most money for the gym, maybe the person with the most clients because they're the best salesperson. And again, there's a difference between being a salesperson and being a good personal trainer as a rule. So that's, and again, if you phrase it, who would you trust for your mom or your dad or your grandparents? I think that's going to give you a better answer than who's the best personal trainer. And after they give you the name of somebody, one thing you might also want to do is, before you say sign up with them, you might want to observe how they're working with their other clients in the gym. So play secret squirrel for a week or so and just watch what they're doing and take notice. For instance, are they, for instance, focusing all their attention on the person they're working with? That's a really good thing. Conversely, are they, say, snapping selfies and texting people while they're training? That is not a good thing. So after you find that personal trainer, here are some questions to ask and some things to think about. Number one, the first question that I would ask a potential new personal trainer is, who are you certified by? Now, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, personal trainers need to obtain a fitness certification before they can work with people in a fitness center or a gym. When you ask a personal trainer who they're certified by, they're going to tell you the acronym of the organization, the abbreviation of the name. There's a whole bunch of these organizations out there. They got big, long names, and all their names are usually basically broken down into about 4 or 5 letters apiece. For instance, if you ask them that question, they may come back and say ACSM or ACE or ISSA, NASM or NSCA, AAAI, NCCPT, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of organizations that certify personal trainers. Each acronym I just gave you stands for the name of the organization. For example, if someone said to you they're certified by, say, ACSM, that's the American College of Sports Medicine. Now, let's take a step back. I don't need you to be familiar with all the different organizations out there. I don't. And I don't expect anybody to know the differences between them, etc. I'm suggesting you ask the personal trainer who they're certified by for another reason. When you ask them this question and they hit you with the letters, say ACSM, NSCA, AAAI, whatever letters they hit you with, your next question is, what do those letters stand for? It's my experience that if they can't tell you what those letters stand for in like 1 second, then that may indicate deficiencies in other areas, and I would suggest you might want to avoid that person. Basically, what I'm saying here is, if they can't tell you the name of the organization they're certified by, could this possibly be an individual who, say, studied for a test and passed an exam and then never, ever continued to educate themselves after the exam was over? Maybe, maybe not. But regardless, I feel that personal trainers should know the name of the organization they're certified by. I often call this my 1-question litmus test for picking a personal trainer. Again, if you had stopped me on the street and you said, hey, I got to pick a personal trainer, what's one question to ask? That's the one question I would ask. Remember, we're using this question to essentially separate the wheat from the chaff, and this sometimes can do the trick. I have to be honest, I have used this many times over the years, and I have stumped a lot of people. Some personal trainers actually get angry when I ask this question. So again, don't be surprised if you stump a few people. But again, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. They're going to hit you with these letters of this organization. I think they should know the name of the organization they're certified by. And if they cannot tell you, I will start to wonder what else they don't know. And I say that because that's such a basic question to ask, and it should be something that just roll off the tongue. And again, if they can't tell me that, I'll start to wonder, what else don't they know? Oh, and while we're on the topic, when you ask them who they're certified by and they'll hit you with the letters, they may say to you that, oh, well, my certification is the best. It's better than all the others. You know what? That's not true. There is no best personal training fitness certification out there. I know I just made a lot of people angry, and I don't care. Hey, I got a couple certifications from one of these organizations that people say is the best. It's not the best. All of them have issues. The thing to realize when it comes to fitness certifications is this: education trumps certification. You want a qualified personal trainer. You don't just want somebody who's certified. Certified means they only know the minimum. You don't just want to go to a doctor who knows the minimum. You want to know somebody who knows more than the minimum. And that's where education comes into play. You want a personal trainer who's going to continue to educate themselves after they took that certification exam. So it's not about the organization they're certified by. It's about their overall education. And that's technically going to bring me to the second question that I would have you ask that person. Do you have any experience working with someone like me, whatever your particular health issues might be? In a perfect world, you would want a fitness trainer who understands the nuances of your health problem. While all personal trainers are basically then going to know the basics of exercise science and stuff like that, some of them may choose to focus on certain areas. And it's kind of like, not to make the analogy again, but it's kind of like a doctor. You got brain doctors, you got heart doctors, you got foot doctors. Well, you could have personal trainers who choose to specialize in certain areas. For instance, if you were to ask me, Joe, what are the areas that you know the most about? I would say there are 5 basic areas that I focused most of my attention on, and they are as follows. Older adults. I often tell people that I like working with older adults because, my oldest client was my 104-year-old grandmother. I mean, I literally did work with her as she was getting older. So I like working with older adults. That's one group that I tend to learn about on an ongoing basis. Number 2, generally speaking, people with health problems. Again, my undergrad is in biochemistry, so I tend to gravitate towards more of the metabolic disorders like diabetes and arthritis and fibromyalgia and high blood pressure and stuff like that. So I learn about that on an ongoing basis as well. I've got a keen interest in sports nutrition, so I do like to learn about all that on an ongoing basis. I have a whole website devoted to nothing but dietary supplements, where I've been investigating them since, gee whiz, the early 1990s. It probably goes back even further than that, but let's say 1990s, I've been investigating supplements. So again, supplement clarity is a testament to my keen insight into that. And then the 5th topic is rhabdomyolysis. Again, I've talked a little bit about that in the past. I'll talk about rhabdo more in the future on this podcast. But that is a topic that I devote a lot of time to. I'm not kidding you when I say that my mornings usually start, not usually, they always do start by reading the research on nutrition, dietary supplements, rhabdomyolysis, and stuff like that. Again, I have some systems in place where I get updated on this information on a regular basis. So again, I chose to focus most of my knowledge, my effort in those areas. Again, if you're saying to me, Joe, I'm looking for somebody to help me train for hockey, well, that's not me. I know the basics of, metabolism and stuff like that, but I don't know hockey that well. I push you over to somebody who, knows about hockey conditioning. So again, we all may have our specialties. Other personal trainers may choose to specialize in maybe, again, hockey conditioning, maybe shoulder rehabilitation. Maybe they focus on preparing people for bodybuilding competitions or working with kids with developmental disabilities. Or I've actually met those people, by the way. Or how about people who are 100 pounds or more overweight? Again, there are personal trainers who focus only on certain things. And if you have a health condition, whether it be you're 100 pounds overweight or you have, say, you have diabetes, it's, I think, in your best interest to work with a fitness professional who specializes in those areas. Doesn't necessarily mean someone who doesn't specialize can't help you, but if I had to pick, I would like to have somebody who does, or at least somebody who is willing to learn along the way on how to help you. Oh, and since we're on the topic of certifications and experience and all that thing, I do think another question you should ask any prospective fitness trainer is whether or not they're also CPR and AED certified. CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and this AED is automated external defibrillators. And I think this is an important thing as well to ask prospective personal trainers, because unfortunately sometimes bad stuff does happen. And while it's rare, if it does happen, it's good to know that you're working with somebody who's able to help. Now, when you do get a personal trainer, I think it's in your best interest to have another question that you might want to ask them is, for instance, what will our workouts together look like? And I think this is a good question to ask because I'm just going to say it. I think some personal trainers work people way too hard sometimes. I think they have people lift too much weight. They do too many sets. They do too many exercises per body part. I have seen this happen, and I've unfortunately heard from many people over the years who've told me this has also happened to them. And so I think this intense exercise belief among some personal trainers can be traced back to a few reasons that I want to, just share these ideas with you in the hopes that they will help you if you're in a situation at a gym working with a personal trainer. So here are, and again, this is basically a sidebar here that I want to talk about. Here are 3 reasons why I think personal trainers work their clients too hard. Number 1. I think some fitness trainers are under the impression that if their clients do not feel sore the next day, that they're afraid that they'll be accused of not working them out hard enough. I know that sounds strange, but I really do believe this happens. I have heard occasionally where personal trainers will tell me, say a client will say, I really didn't feel a whole lot from our last workout together. I think maybe I want to go and find somebody else. That is just crazy. And again, that is a testament to the belief in some people's minds, not only the trainers' minds, but also the general public's minds, that greater intensity of exercise and more muscle soreness means a person had a better workout. Unfortunately, we do live in the world where intense exercise is often seen as being better. And I'll just say it, I blame for a lot of this, those reality weight loss TV shows where the personal trainers beat people up. I blame them for a lot of this misunderstanding. But regardless of what the cause is, if you're a novice, if you're a beginner, you're starting working out and you hire a personal trainer, you don't need to be exercised to exhaustion, and you don't need to be feeling a debilitating amount of muscle pain the next day. So again, I do, that's number 1. I do think personal trainers are under the impression that they have to make people work out really hard, which again is not necessarily so. The second reason why I think that they push people too hard is that in most fitness facilities, personal trainers are under a time constraint. Here in America, for instance, the typical personal training session is only about 30 minutes. That personal trainer has about 30 minutes or less in some cases to do the best darn job she or he can do. And because of this limited time, I think the trainer may subconsciously think that they have to squeeze as much intensity in a short period of time as they possibly can, which again is unfortunately not something they really need to be doing on a regular basis to everybody. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule, but for many individuals who hire trainers, again, most of them being novices, it's just not necessarily something you need to be doing. And then the third reason why I think personal trainers push people too hard in the gym is actually what I call one of the dirty little secrets in the fitness world. And it goes like this, and this really does happen. It's going to surprise some of you, but it is the truth. In some fitness centers, the manager or owner of the gym, whoever it is calling the shots, will tell the personal trainers to make people sore on purpose. You heard that right. Sometimes the personal trainers are instructed to make people sore. What the heck's up with that? So the idea behind this dirty little trick, as I call it, is if the person wakes up sore the next day, they will think that they're out of shape. And in theory, the idea is they're more likely to hire a personal trainer. So it's basically a psychological trick that they're pulling, and it's unethical, and it has no place in the world of fitness. And without naming names, I just want you to know that this dirty little trick goes on in quite a few gyms. And I know this because some of their personal trainers have been telling me this over the years. And so I wanted to bring it to your attention just in case you find yourself in a situation like this. One of the other things that I'm told goes on in addition to all this is that personal trainer will not show somebody how to use any of the machines in the gym. They'll focus only on the barbells and the dumbbells and the kettlebells. Why would they do this? Well, because if that person is a novice, they don't know as much about barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells. And so the idea is keep that person confused. And the idea also is if you're confused, you're more likely to come back and hire that personal trainer again. Again, the reality of all this is that personal training, the department of personal training is the biggest moneymaker in the facility. And so they want to get as many people on the personal training track as they possibly can. But regardless of that, to make somebody sore on purpose as a mechanism to get them to hire personal trainers is completely unethical. And again, I can't give you statistics on this. I can only tell you that this has been brought to my attention several times over the years. And so that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention as well. Which again, this is something you can avoid if you are asking the personal trainer up front, what are our workouts together going to look like? If when you ask that question and the trainer responds by saying something like, well, on each different day, we're going to work a different body part and we're going to do things like HIIT training, high intensity interval training. Again, if you are a novice, that's, in my opinion, not appropriate. And at that point, I'd probably tell you to find a new trainer. And I would say that because if they're working different body parts on different days, that's just way too much intensity. And for the person with a health problem, again, way too much intensity for that individual as well. So I don't personally believe that workout programs for a beginner should focus on individual muscle groups. As I usually say, in classes, there should be no leg day, no arm day, no chest and back day in a beginner. Again, it's just way too much intensity. I am biased. I think the safest way to train a novice is to do a total body strength training program, In this type of a program, you're, say, picking between 8 and 10 different exercises for the major muscle groups, and you're just going to do one exercise per body part. So you'll do one set of leg press, one set of chest press, one set of lat pull down, and so on. Doing this is going to have an awful lot of benefits. It's going to reduce muscle soreness. It's going to improve muscle strength, muscle power, muscle endurance. And for the person who does not like to exercise, at least in the beginning, it's going to have an added benefit because doing it this way, working out this way, is not boring. Time will go by faster when they're in the gym, and that is a huge plus for the person who doesn't like to exercise. As the time goes by faster, they're going to like working out more, and this is going to improve what's called exercise adherence. Exercise adherence is fancy talk for having the person getting in the swing of exercise on a regular basis. And as an added benefit to all that, when you do a total body strength training program, again, I personally do believe this is also going to dampen down the risk of getting rhabdomyolysis as well. Again, rhabdo, I've talked about it before. I'll talk about it again on this podcast. It's essentially muscle fiber breakdown from too much exercise. It is a rare but also very, very serious medical condition. And while I'm not talking about it here today, if you skip back to, say, episodes 7 and 13, I talk much more about rhabdo in those episodes. Or if you jump over to my website, joe-cannon.com, and look at the rhabdo section, you can see all my reports on rhabdo, even some interviews I've done with people who've developed this condition. Again, while rhabdo is rare, I do think it happens more often than gyms than most people think. I do believe it's happening more now than when I first started talking about rhabdo over a decade ago. So the bottom line to all this is when you ask the personal trainer, what's our workouts going to look like? And if what they say doesn't sit so well with you, feel free to share your thoughts on how you think this exercise program should look like and see what they think. I have to believe that most fitness professionals would be open and accommodating to your input. But anybody who's not, who basically says it's my way or the highway, well, then they got to hit the highway. It's time for a new trainer. Oh, by the way, while we're on the topic, notice a second ago I used the word exercise program. I do like to make the distinction between workouts and programs. An exercise workout versus an exercise program, they're kind of different from each other. I'm kind of splitting hairs here, but they are kind of different. A workout is what you do on any given day, but an exercise program is kind of like the big picture. A program can last for several months or in some cases several years. So an exercise program is more of a long-term regimen and it's broken up into several different workouts. And the program itself is designed to take you where you're at right now and gradually progress you to where you want to be in the future. So exercise programs, they're not something that you can kind of whip together in a couple seconds. It sometimes takes some time and some effort to think about. Again, the trainer is going to think about, where you are now in terms of your fitness level, but also take into consideration your health and your wellness and any kind of limitations you might have. And they're going to essentially formulate some long-term strategy to improve your health and wellness. So keep that in mind as you work with a personal trainer. There should be some logic to what they're doing. So don't be afraid to ask them from time to time, why am I doing this? Again, any personal trainer worth their salt is going to be able to tell you why you're doing this and what the ultimate goal should be. Now, when you join a fitness center, it's possible that the person who is signing you up may be the fitness director, or they sometimes call themselves the fitness director or the fitness manager. That's another term that pops up. What I want you to realize or even ask is the fitness director also a personal trainer? While generally the person who is in charge of the personal training department will, him or herself, also be a personal trainer, that's not always going to be the case. And so I want to bring this up for a reason. If the personal training director is a person who's signing you up, and if they sense that maybe you're on the fence, they may offer to, say, train you for a period of time for free to kind of sweeten the deal. Well, if that does come up, you should be asking that manager, that director, are you a certified personal trainer? This is something to think about because while they many times may be, sometimes the person running the personal training department is actually a salesman. And I understand why that is. We have to realize that gyms are, in essence, a business and they want to make money. And the personal training department is usually the biggest revenue generating system they have. And so to make more money, they'll hire a salesperson. Well, that's all fine and good until that salesperson essentially pretends to be a personal trainer and tries to train you. Well, that person's going to know sales. They're not going to know exercise science and exercise program design and muscle physiology and stuff like that. So if you put your hands in, say, this person who's not a real personal trainer, it's possible that they could injure you by prescribing too much exercise or the wrong exercises, or sometimes they even train people like they train themselves, which is, really wacky. You shouldn't be doing that. Nobody should be doing that. But especially if you're a salesman, that's probably what they're going to fall back on because that may be the only thing they know. Again, I think it's a problem, and so I do understand why gyms do this. I don't agree with it. I think the person who runs the personal training department should also be a personal trainer. But again, it is what it is. I can't change things, but I can arm you with the knowledge to hopefully avoid working with the salesman / personal trainer or fitness director / personal trainer, when in reality, they're really just salesmen playing the part of a personal trainer. And again, if they say, yes, I'm a personal trainer, hit them with that very first question I asked you, who are you certified by? And again, if they can't tell you in 1 second what those letters stand for, walk away. So there you basically have it. That's my essential guide to how to find a personal trainer who hopefully is right for you. It's a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I wanted to wait before Christmas and the other holidays were up because I know that that's when people tend to join fitness centers. And I wanted to give you some things to think about if you are considering hiring a personal trainer. I will put some links to relevant articles I've written in the episode notes so you can learn more about this topic if you choose to. And I also want to say that I know that for some of you, it may seem like I just laid the smackdown on the fitness industry. And while I kind of did, truth be told, I did it out of love because I like the industry. I'm part of the industry. And also because I want to help you and I want to help you find the right person for you and your particular needs. So that's about all I got for you this week. As always, if you need to reach out to me, you can do so at either of my websites, joe-cannon.com and or supplementclarity.com. With that, I'll end this episode with the exception of hitting you with the quote of the week, which comes to us from Jack LaLanne, who, if you don't know who he is or was, Jack was basically the godfather of fitness. Look him up. He's responsible for pretty much everything you see in the gym today. His quote goes like this: "Exercise is king and nutrition is queen. Together you have a kingdom." Until next week, same bad time, same bad channel. Go out, be safe, and where you can, don't forget to make a difference.